Part 15. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 144. After eating, Gyatso and the monk said goodbye and left. They really needed a rest. After all, they had been fighting against the resentful infant in the last period of time. However, Subai was different. In addition to entering, I was a little frightened after being imprisoned, and I basically spent the remaining 10 days in a cage. In the world of the story, it was considered comfortable. Subai sat at the dining table for a while. When he was about to get up and take the little guy and Ji Xiang out for a walk, there was a knock on the door outside the house. "Is this Mr. Su?" "Hello, I am the lobby manager of Paradise Hotel." Subai was a little surprised. He didn't know what the manager wanted from him, so he said, "What?" The manager opened the door himself, but did not come in, and said very apologetically, "Why didn't Mr. Su say hello in advance when he checked in here? If someone hadn't found Mr. Su's name in the guest record backstage, we really wouldn't have known." Woolen cloth. "What's going on?" Subai picked up the little guy, and Jixiang followed Subai. The manager finally confirmed that Subai didn't know about this. He showed a wry smile and said, "Mr. Su, you have shares in this hotel." Subai suddenly understood, but he did not know that the assets left by his parents were now implemented under the professional manager system. He usually would not be too distracted. For him, money used to be just a number. At least he has no worries about food and drink in this life, and does not have to worry about his livelihood. But now, after encountering the terrorist broadcast, Subai naturally takes an even lighter view of these things. If money in the real world can be exchanged for that, would be great for the story, and I wouldn't have to worry about these bullets now. "Oh, I have nothing to do here. You can go and do your work." Subai felt that the manager might have thought that he had sneaked in to investigate on purpose, but he really didn't know that he actually had shares here before. "You need me to help Mr. Su and your two friends upgrade their rooms?" "We also have." "No need, it's fine now." "Okay, Mr. Su, here is my business card. You can call me anytime if you need anything." Subai took the business card, and the manager immediately left. The little guy took the gold-rimmed business card from Subai's hand and played with it, then put it in his mouth and bit it. He frowned when he found that it was hard and not tasty. "Well, at least I don't have to worry about the milk powder money to feed you." Subai rubbed the little guy's head. However, the little one can eat chicken drumsticks on the first day after birth, and does not seem to need to drink milk powder. The environment in the hotel is very good. A huge glass room covers the pavilion and water pavilion below. You can clearly see the stars in the sky at night, which gives people a sense of security without the slightest sense of restraint. There were some small animals in the water flowing across the small bridges. The little guy was held by Subai with both hands and grabbed the railing of the small bridge. He looked at a quail below without moving. After a while, the quail also turned its head, but soon turned away again, and then swam leisurely to another place. The little guy put his finger in his mouth and sucked it, then looked at the quail and then at Subai. "It's already very pitiful here, so let's not torment it anymore." The little guy nodded in understanding, and soon he was attracted by the small waterfall. The little guy kept kicking his legs to get down. Subai had no choice but to squat down, grabbing the little guy's waist and letting him lean on the railing with both hands. Then he found that the little guy was leaning quite firmly, so he let go and stood up. "Stand up. E." The little guy kept shouting incomprehensible childish language at the man-made waterfall, and seemed very lively and excited. However, the little guy seemed to be too excited. One of his legs actually slipped and he stepped through the gap in the railing. He suddenly slipped and fell into the fountain pool. Subai was just about to reach out to catch him, but Jixiang was faster than Subai and jumped into the pool and started surrounding the little guy. Apparently he was afraid that something might happen to the little guy, but Jixiang was obviously overly worried. Subai was I still remember the scene when the little guy was thrown into a water tank to be washed on the first day he was born, and then he was able to swim around in it. Sure enough, after Jixiang hurried down, he found that the little guy was actually head up, kicking the water with his two little fleshy feet, and he was having a great time playing in the fountain pool. Jixiang stepped ashore again, shook the water droplets from his hair, and continued to squat by the pool coldly. Subai came over, stretched out his hand and patted Jixiang. "That's good. You can help me take care of my children when I enter the story world. You will be much more stable than those nannies and aunties." Jixiang didn't respond and continued to squat there. Subai clapped his hands and walked over to fish the little guy out of the water. "Okay, it's cold, stop playing, it's time to go to bed." Holding the little guy in his arms, Jixiang followed him. Subai returned to the room. The little guy was indeed a little tired. Subai put him on the bed, and he just curled up there obediently, biting his thumb and fell asleep. Jixiang and the little guy is in almost the same posture, curled up next to the little guy. One person and one cat now look extremely harmonious. Subai found that there was some red wine and other things in his room. Apparently, although he did not agree to change the room, the hotel still put some thought into it. After pouring himself a glass of red wine, Subai walked to the balcony. In the night sky, only a shadow of the snow-capped mountains could be seen, but the vast posture was still revealed. After taking a sip of red wine, Subai took out his mobile phone. Subai didn't have many friends on WeChat. This was probably because of his somewhat withdrawn temperament. Even in college, he had a good relationship with classmates. Not much actually. Flicking through the friend list, Subai saw Lizzie's WeChat avatar, which looked auspicious. Subai didn't know where Lichi had gone or what she was doing. Of course, he didn't seem to have the desire to know. The red wine glass was placed on the railing of the balcony. Subai supported the railing with both hands, closed his eyes, and took a deep breath. The air had a rough and desolate smell. Subai liked it very much, but this place was certainly it is beautiful, with beautiful mountains and clear waters, but for most people, it is not suitable to live here for a long time. After all, the altitude is here. At this moment, Subai found that someone had sent him a WeChat message. When he saw that person, Subai was a little surprised. It turned out to be Sunur. Ever since Sunur told him that he was going to be a military attaché at the London embassy and the killing club was disbanded, there has been no contact between Subai and Sunur. Friends, that's how it is. If most friends don't contact each other for a long time, relationships are like that. What are you doing? Sunur sent this news. Subai picked up his phone, pointed the camera in front of him, started recording a short video, and then sent it. Soon, Sunur sent a voice call, and Subai pressed the answer button. "It's beautiful. I'm living a good life as a kid." "It's daytime in London now," Subai replied. "Wrong, I just came back. I'm in Shanghai now. Back on business." "Well, that's about it. I'll come back and take care of some things. Then come on." "Why, do I, a girl, have to put it so bluntly that you, a young man who loves mountains and rivers, come to Shanghai quickly to meet me and have dinner with me? Haha, I heard that someone has gone to a medical school in London. Okay, by the way, go check out Chu Zhao's circle of friends. He just got promoted." So fast, Subai frowned slightly, not because he was jealous of his good friend's promotion, but because he was worried that if Chu Zhao's family was running all this behind the scenes, it would be a shame for a person who has no sense of belonging to the police profession. For those who are sensitive, the higher they sit, the more likely they are to have problems. Look at the circle of friends, he is looking pretty. Subai clicked into the circle of friends, refreshed it, and saw the message Chu Zhao had just posted in the circle of friends 2 minutes ago. It was a picture and text. When he clicked on the picture, Subai read: I, Wang Baoqiang, hereby declare the dissolution of my marriage to my wife Marong as follows. Subai was stunned for a moment. Oh, that's wrong, it's not this. This guy, who is a policeman, is still gossiping like this. He posted about celebrities cheating and getting divorced on his friend's circle. Sooner was obviously speechless. People at the level of celebrities may be very glamorous and high-ranking to ordinary people, but for children from their families, most celebrities are no different from ancient actors. They can even shout a few when they are happy while eating. Celebrities come to keep them company. He is playing detective reasoning. Didn't you see his last sentence? Chu Zhao added it himself, saying that Chen Sichen, the director of Detective Chinatown, had deliberately reminded Wang Baoqiang that you were cuckolded because of that paragraph in the plot. The policeman played by Wang Baoqiang went abroad to pursue his career because he discovered that his wife was fooling around with others in his hometown. Subai smiled slightly. This guy Chu Zhao's thinking is really novel. I don't know what he is thinking in his mind. This can also be used for reasoning. Sooner seemed speechless. Soon, Subai scrolled down and found the selfie uploaded by Chu Zhao an hour ago. He was wearing a police uniform and looked very heroic. There was a group of colleagues around him. It should be a party to celebrate his promotion. In the photo, Chu Zhao was also very happy. As a good friend, Subai also hoped that Chu Zhao could be more open-minded and stop being so repulsive to the police profession as before. But soon, Subai's eyes immediately focused. He saw a hand on Chu Zhao's shoulder. It was unclear whose hand it belonged to. He seemed to be wearing a police uniform, but he was not captured in the photo. That hand, the thumbnail of her thumb was exposed. It should be a woman's hand. The nails were very long and beautiful and were painted with black nail polish. However, Subai felt something was wrong. Immediately, Subai spread his hands. The zombie state slowly switches. Soon, Subai saw that the nails on his left hand began to grow wildly, with a jet black luster and a faint halo. Subai put his thumb on the phone, and then enlarged the picture. The thumbnail was placed together with Subai's fingernail. This is not nail polish. Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 145. Subai took a deep breath and returned to his previous state. He then used his mobile phone to find Chu Zhao's number in the address book and dialed. Hey, Mr. Su, aren't you retiring in Chengdu? Why, do you still remember that in the Far East, there is a policeman friend of yours who is serving the people day and night? Hearing Chu Zhao's usual careless words, Subai felt a little more at ease. In fact, from the picture, it could not be seen that the owner of the hand wanted to do anything to Chu Zhao. Maybe it was just taken by mistake. Go in. However, Subai felt incredible when he thought that there was something like that beside Chu Zhao, and that the other person was probably a policeman. Where is the institution? Even ordinary people have a sense of awe towards that place, let alone that kind of thing. The hospital is haunted, the morgue is haunted, the alleys are haunted, but I have never heard that the police station is also haunted. However, that thing can actually get into it. Subai drank the red wine that had been placed on the railing in one gulp, and immediately said, "Don't hang up. Show me the photo of the party you just posted in WeChat Moments. The hand on your shoulder is the hand with the black nail polish on the nails. Do you remember? Don't remember who the owner of that hand is? Wait, let me take a look first." Chu Zhao laughed, and then went to look at the photos of the station inexplicably. Then, Chu Zhao's tone became more serious. "I say, Mr. Su, if you now suddenly I have a fetish for hand control. You don't have to think about this anymore. She is my girlfriend now. Hee, I originally wanted to introduce you to someone, but seeing that each of you has either entered Sichuan or gone abroad, brother, I can only have fun first. Female. Friend. Friend. These three words appeared repeatedly in Subai's mind. It was really hard for him to imagine Chu Zhao and that thing doing that kind of thing together. Okay, don't envy me. You've been single for a long time, and it's time to find a partner. My girlfriend made me a supper. Hey, let me tell you, I ate a plate of scrambled eggs with leeks tonight. Leeks. Stir-fry the meat, stir-fry the leeks and mushrooms, sow the seeds tonight, and then wait for the wedding. This. You should go to bed early and come back when you have time. It's not troublesome to take a plane anyway. I'll go and get busy first, goodbye. Chu Zhao hung up the phone. Subai looked at the phone, a little dumbfounded. He returned the goodbye and scrambled eggs with leeks. He really wanted to see what your expression would be like when you knew who the person you were going to have sex with was. However, Subai did not continue to call, nor did he want to remind Chu Zhao. It seemed that the thing had been with Chu Zhao for a long time, and he probably did not intend to do anything to Chu Zhao for the time being. Chu Zhao was still safe at this time. Yes, although Subai still couldn't figure out how Chu Zhao did that kind of thing with that thing, Subai knew that if he bothered to call Chu Zhao to remind him, he would have to say whether he believed it or not. If he believed it, he would have to face that thing. It may even lead to his tragedy due to abnormal reactions or superfluous details. It seems that he is quite happy. Sunur's voice came from the mobile phone. When Subai called Chu Zhao before, he did not hang up the voice call between himself and Sunur. Well, I'm really envious, Subai teased. Judging from young Master Su's vision and requirements, he really doesn't look down on ordinary-looking people, let alone those who are serious enough to be involved with that kind of thing. Okay, you can go to bed early, I won't disturb you anymore. I'll go back to Shanghai tomorrow and make an appointment then. You really touched me suddenly. Do you refuse at all costs? Come on, you can confess your love to me seriously. I'm a glass-hearted person. Subai looked at the time and said, okay, you can go to bed early. See you tomorrow. Well, see you tomorrow, good night. After hanging up the voice call, Subai walked back to the room, sat on the sofa, took his mobile phone and started to check the flight tickets. Chengdu is nearly 2,000 kilometers away from Shanghai, and Zhezhou is estimated to be several hundred kilometers away from Shanghai. Like when he came here, it's obviously impossible to drive by yourself like that. Fortunately, there is an airport here in Zhezhou. After booking 2 flights to Shanghai tomorrow morning, Subai didn't have much to pack. He didn't bring many things when he came to travel, so he simply lay down on the bed, hugged the little one and hugged him. In my arms, I closed my eyes and prepared to sleep for a while. The little guy was very clumsy with his hands and feet, and liked to kick his legs and raise his hands when sleeping, but this feeling gave Subai a great sense of security in his heart, a sense of security that he had not felt for a long, long time. In the morning, Subai Yuyu opened his eyes. He didn't set the alarm clock because he knew he wouldn't oversleep. The little guy actually woke up at this time, broke away from his arms, and was playing with Ji Xiang on the other side of the bed. Subai stood up, took his wallet and mobile phone, wrapped the little guy in his own coat, held him in his arms, called the lobby manager to arrange a car, and took him directly to the hotel. On the way I sent a message to the monk saying that I had to leave in an emergency. After changing the boarding pass and going through the security check, Subai took a luggage trolley, put Jixiang and the little guy in it, and then passed the security check directly in full view of everyone, without being subject to luggage inspection. Auspiciousness naturally plays an important role in this. After boarding the plane, Subai placed Ji Xiang and the little guy next to him, and the flight attendants who came and went were completely blind to the fact that someone was boarding the plane with a baby and a pet. After fastening the seat belt for the little guy, Subai didn't care about Ji Xiang. Anyway, it wasn't the first time for this guy to fly. When the plane began to sprint and prepare to take off, the little guy's eyes widened and his mouth became O-shaped. It was obviously the first time to take off, which surprised the little guy. Subai also knew the little guy's precocious intelligence. When the plane flew above the clouds and started flying smoothly, Subai picked up the little guy and let him look at the clouds outside through the porthole. The little guy patted the window excitedly with his little hands, looking very excited. Subai kissed the little guy on the head, and the little guy chuckled. The plane landed about 3 hours later, and Subai got off the plane with the little guy in his arms. As soon as he came out, Subai saw a beautiful figure standing there in the waiting room. After not seeing each other for a long time, Sunar's figure became more upright. It was probably because of his overseas experience during this period that he also had a sense of stability. Sunar is not wearing a skirt or jeans, but a set of military camouflage. Nowadays, the People's Liberation Army is no longer in the era of millet plus rifles and mill-layer bottoms. The military uniforms are getting better and better now. Sunar is standing there, like the most eye-catching scenery, with a beautiful face and a military temperament, directly eclipsing the women walking by. "How did you know I was on this plane?" Subai came over and asked. Sunar laughed, with two charming dimples appearing on his face. "Don't forget what I do." Human rights, my privacy has been violated, I want to complain to you," Subai joked. "Hey, you actually took a cat with you on your trip. You must have put a lot of effort into bringing it back on the plane." Sunar knelt down to tease Ji Xiang, but Ji Xiang just glanced at Sunar and kept silent. "My own absolutely cool style." Sunar was not angry even after being hit by a wall here in Jixiang. He stood up, holding Subai's shoulder with one hand naturally, and then naturally touched the clothes in Subai's arms. The little one who just dozed off before getting off the plane fell asleep. The guy woke up at this time, poked his little head out of his clothes, looked around in confusion, and then saw his eldest sister looking at him in shock. And this eldest sister's hand actually held Subai's hand. The little guy's face immediately wrinkled, and tears began to well up in his eyes. The baby felt aggrieved. The one who was more surprised was probably Sunar. He didn't expect that Subai was actually holding a child. "This kid is so cute. Does he belong to your relative?" Sunar reached out and pinched the little guy's cheek. "Mine," Subai replied calmly. Sunar was stunned for a moment, then slowly released his hand. "Your?" "Yes, mine." "Why haven't I heard you say that?" Sunar didn't dare to choke. "Illegitimate son," Subai replied, and then hugged the little guy tightly. "Let's go, let's leave the airport first. By the way, have you informed Chu Zhao? He said he had business today. Tell him to push me. Also, ask him to bring his girlfriend with him. Let's have lunch together." Sunar nodded, feeling a little complicated, but he still took out his mobile phone and called Chu Zhao again. Chu Zhao was obviously a little embarrassed, but Subai had said so, and he couldn't chirk anymore and could only agree. "Put aside the things at hand and come out at noon." Sunar drove over in a car. Subai got in the car and sat in the passenger seat. The little guy was still in Subai's arms, while Ji Xiang sat obediently in the back. "I heard before that your cousin is getting engaged. I thought that in a family like ours, both men and women get engaged very early. I didn't expect that you actually had children faster than them." Subai could feel something was wrong in Sunar's tone, but still pretended not to hear it. "I will take good care of him." "What about the child's mother?" Sunar asked. "This is my privacy," Subai replied stiffly. Obviously, the privacy this time was different from what was mentioned before, and it was not a joke. Sunar raised her head slightly and drove. Her nose began to feel sore, but she didn't let herself cry, and she didn't allow herself to cry either. "Subai, we are good friends, aren't we? We even killed people together." Subai turned his head towards the window and did not answer, but his attitude said everything. Sorry. I don't know if I have a future. From 10 o'clock last night to 12 noon now, Long has been sitting in front of the computer for more than 13 hours. He thought he could write 5 chapters in a row, but he still only wrote 4 chapters. In the middle of the day, he saw that Wang Baoqiang was getting divorced, and he also it was easily written into the plot. I am not saying this to gain sympathy or to ask for anything. I just hope that no one in the book review area will say that I am disappointed in Long because he is lazy and does not update. If Long writes more chapters, he will earn more subscription money for one chapter. This is when Long is short of money. How could it be possible to be lazy? So every time when Long is still coding late at night, I see people in the book review area constantly making excuses about this, saying that they are disappointed with your update and you are too lazy to cancel the automatic subscription. Long is really sad when you are complaining about why you haven't updated. On the other side, Long has actually been racking his brains in front of the computer screen typing, writing fast. Long also wants to write fast, but everyone knows that there is no routine for Long's type of writing. There is no routine at all. I can't write fast. If Long could write fast, I believe everyone wouldn't like that kind of writing. Now I can't open my eyes. Long goes to sleep. Good afternoon everyone, hug Long. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiao Long. Chapter 146. Where to eat at noon, Sooner asked. After driving for a while, her mood returned to normal. As a military attaché stationed abroad, part of the reason was the push from her family, but her own high quality also required an indispensable condition. Let's eat Chinese food. I remember that the private restaurant we went to last year was quite good. I have been in Sichuan for a long time, and now I want to change my taste. Sooner nodded and drove into a community. After parking the car, the group took the elevator directly to the 35th floor. At the corner was a private restaurant with a very exquisite layout and few tables. It is necessary to make a reservation in advance, but with Sooner's background and ability, there is no need to make extra reservations. It's not mealtime yet, and there are no guests yet. The boss is a middle-aged man wearing chef's clothes. He actually recognized the 2 young people who came here last year. He was very observant and after asking a few people, he immediately arranged a seat by the window and handed over. After placing the menu, I went down to make a phone call to a customer who had made a reservation to place an order. This kind of thing can only be said to be normal for Subai and Sooner. However, Subai does not often come to this kind of place, and rarely attends gatherings in the circle of young masters. They are quite famous in various circles. Subai sometimes thought that if his parents had not died, maybe he would be like those young men, playing when it was time to play, and letting loose when it was time to be wild. The little guy sat next to Subai. The boss specially brought a baby chair. Jixiang was lying on another chair. He had never cared much about human food and looked very lazy at this time. After Sooner ordered the dishes, he didn't show them to Subai and put them directly on the side of the table. The waiter immediately came over and took the menu down. Sooner also knew that Subai was not the kind of person who liked politeness and trouble. He liked to eat. Something he will also like. On the table, it began to become slightly quiet. The little guy seemed to have noticed that something was wrong with the surrounding atmosphere, so he didn't make any fuss. He just sat obediently in the baby chair and played with his fingers. He also opened his belly band and pinched himself from time to time. Belly, he is still not very satisfied with the 2 marks on his belly. Why do children wear this? Sooner asked. I didn't have time to buy it. How many months? 5 or 6 months. When the little guy is born from the fox's body, he is actually much bigger than an ordinary baby. Generally, when a baby is just born, his skin is folded together, and he is very small and not very good looking. But throughout his life, the little guy will, when it comes out, it's thin skin, tender meat, white and plump. The monk said that he was born from the aura of heaven and earth condensed in the body of a fox. The fox was not fertilized, so the fox was just a surrogate, and there was no fundamental blood relationship. Suner saw that Subai didn't really want to talk about this matter, so he changed the subject. Tell me, when Chu Zhao comes over later and sees that you have a son, what will his expression be like? It's hard to say. Subai smiled slightly. Are you worried? Suner felt it. Subai shook his head. The atmosphere fell into dullness again. Subai didn't speak, and Suner didn't speak either. They just sat quietly. About 20 minutes later, Chu Zaikai walked in, followed behind him by a young woman in casual clothes. Come on, let me introduce to you. This is my girlfriend Zaiwai. These two have been my best friends since childhood. Lu Sun, you can call her sister Suner. She is now the most promising person in our circle. One is now a military attaché of the Republic stationed abroad. This one is my best buddy, Subai, who will be called Brother Bai from now on. Sister Suner, Brother Bai. Zaiwai bowed to the two of them politely and sensibly. Obviously, she is still a little restrained. She should know a little bit about Chu Zhao's family background. This should not be a big secret in the local police system. After all, Chu Zhao's previous professional attitude that was very repulsive to the police profession is still, being able to work well and being promoted recently is enough to show that there is someone above him, and his background is definitely not small. Birds of a feather flock together, and these two Chu Zhao said they were best friends when they were young. Naturally, they also have great status. Moreover, this young woman, not much older than herself, is actually a military attaché stationed abroad. Hello, nice to meet you. Suner nodded, but did not stand up. After all, the status gap between the two parties is here. People in the circle change lovers very frequently. If Chu Zhao leads out his fiancée, Suner will naturally be able to treat people in the circle. However, now that Chu Zhao and her are just boyfriend and girlfriend, Suner naturally doesn't care too much. Subai rubbed his fingers slightly. Ever since this woman came in, Subai had been observing her, but found that he could not feel the same kind of breath on the woman, but the woman's nails. Yes, nails. The color, the feeling, and even the faint halo that could dazzle Subai's eyes made Subai very sure. At the same time, Subai also noticed that Chu Zhao's face was slightly green, which was Yangqi being smoked, and it's the kind of free-range smoking. Damn it, you're actually using him as a stovetop. Whose child is this? It's so cute, ha ha ha, give me a hug, uncle. Chu Zhao saw the little guy and reached out to hug this cute little boy who was as pink and tender as the boy in the New Year pictures. My son. Bang. Chu Zhao's feet slipped and he almost fell to the ground. After he stood firm, he stuttered in disbelief, Subai, are you kidding me? My son. Subai repeated. Hiss. Chu Zhao took a deep breath, and then glanced at Suner inadvertently. Suner smiled and said, don't look at me, I didn't give birth to you. Ahem. Chu Zhao hurriedly sat down, and Xiao Hui also sat down next to him. I'm still buying tickets, you get on the boat and start. Xiao Hui shyly reached out and pinched Chu Zhao's thigh. Chu Zhao also smiled sillily and didn't mind. Let's serve. Subai said to the waiter beside him. All right, please wait. The dishes in this private restaurant are very exquisite. The adults ate a little absent-mindedly, but the little guy ate very happily. When he saw the dish he liked, he pointed at it, and then Subai picked it up and put it in front of him. In the bowl, the little guy doesn't need chopsticks and eats directly with his hands, which gives people a very cute feeling. Although Suner was a little caught off guard by the appearance of this child, when he watched such a cute baby eating in front of him, the complicated emotions in his heart dissipated a lot, and he even took the initiative to take care of the little guy's meals. When Chu Zhao saw this scene, he curled his lips unconsciously. Even the illegitimate children came out, but Suner's attitude made him feel like he was willing to be a stepmother. "I'm going to the bathroom." Xiao Hui bowed slightly, then stood up and left the position towards the bathroom. Although this private restaurant does not have a front room, it specializes in high-end catering. It has 3 rooms on this floor of the building, so the bathroom is not small, and is basically similar to the bathroom in a large restaurant. Subai also patted the little guy's head gently at this time, picked up a shrimp and put it in the little guy's bowl. "I'm going to the bathroom too." After Subai also left, Chu Zhao immediately looked at Suner. "What's going on? Why does Subai have a child? How could I know?" "How could you not know? You are not." Okay, pretend I didn't say it." Chu Zhao shrugged angrily, "but if it's really an illegitimate child, it doesn't matter to him. The Su family basically maintains a nominal relationship anyway, and my family doesn't care about my private life, much less care about it. Why are you telling me this?" "But it's different in your family." Chu Zhao took a deep breath and said, "Actually, all of us can see that, and Gu Fan is not stupid. Of course he can also see that you have feelings for Subai. Tisk, tisk, I just try my best. My duty as a friend is that he has a child now. If you still want to be with him, you must break up with your family." Surprisingly, Suner did not scold Chu Zhao this time, but remained silent. Xia Wei had just gone to the toilet, walked out, and touched up her makeup in front of the sink mirror. Obviously, she attached great importance to accompanying her boyfriend to his first gathering with such important friends. At this time, Subai also walked in. Xiao Hui was startled, looked at Subai, patted her chest and said, "Brother Bai, you went to the wrong place. This is the women's bathroom." "I made the right move, I just came to find you." Subai said straight to the point. "Brother Bai, if something happens to you, we can go out and talk about it." "Really? Let's talk here, it's very convenient." Subai took out a cigarette and held it in his mouth. At this time, in the eyes of others, Subai was really having sex with a Huahua who broke into the women's toilet to be obscene and molesting women. Young master is almost the same. "Brother Bai, I am Chu Zhao's girlfriend. If you do this again, I will call you." Shout, "I want to see." In Chu Zhao's heart, who is more important, me, the buddy I have been playing with since childhood, or you, the woman I have just befriended and slept with? Don't forget who I am, don't forget you. The status between you and me are different. Subai's fingers gently slid across Xiao Hui's cheek. "Well, it's quite slippery, I like it." Why, are you okay?" Chu Zhao's voice came from outside the bathroom. Xiao Hui immediately reached out and grabbed Subai's hand, then pulled Subai into the inner room, closed the door and shouted to the outside. "I'll be there for a while, dear, I'm sorry, my stomach feels a little uncomfortable." It's okay, don't worry, it's okay. I'll accompany you to the hospital after dinner." Chu Zhao's footsteps gradually faded away. Subai smiled. He had his back to Xiao Hui at this time, and he stretched out his hand to shake the ashes of the cigarette very comfortably. "He's gone, just in time. Help me blow it out." "How exciting." After saying that, Subai slowly turned around. Who stood before him? She is no longer that Xia Wei, but a man with a livid face. Zombies. Forget it." Subai threw the cigarette butt to the ground very calmly. "Have you finally been forced to reveal yourself?" Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Disiao. Chapter 147. Xiao Hui's eyes were fixed on Subai, and 2 lines of blood tears slowly flowed out from the corners of Xiao Hui's eyes, which looked very eerie and strange. However, these were nothing to Subai. After all, this appearance would not scare anyone. Seeing him will make him feel extremely friendly. As if saw myself. To paraphrase what the monk said before, Subai felt almost the same when seeing zombies as when he saw his own relatives. Subai's hand reached out to Xiao Hui's forehead and touched it gently. This kind of caressing does not have much emotional color, and is completely different from the previous teasing gesture. At this time, Subai's eyes are very clear, without any smoke and fire. Of course, no matter how perverted Subario is, wouldn't really mess with a zombie. Xiao Hui's face showed expressions of anger, surprise, and finally panic. Obviously, she seemed to have noticed something from Subai's calmness. Even when Subai no longer deliberately concealed the breath of blood in her body, Xiao Hui's heart suddenly became extremely heavy, as if a layer of dark clouds were pressing down on him. A feeling of facing the elders, appeared in Xiaohui's heart, gradually making her unable to resist, and even had the urge to worship. Subai didn't do anything specifically at this time. He just remembered how he felt when he controlled the ordinary zombies in the previous story world, and how after the zombie king appeared, he used his momentum and blood pressure to force these zombies to attack him. Pictures of surrender. Along with zombies, Subai did not take the initiative to choose the path to take, but since he has already embarked on it, he must learn and summarize it. Fortunately, Subai is thankful that his learning ability in this aspect is still good. Xiao Hui's zombie level is definitely not as high as his own. Subai can clearly sense this. Because, if there is a zombie with a high bloodline level hiding in the Magic City, it is estimated that the horror broadcast has already issued real-life tasks to specific listeners to solve this time bomb hidden in the crowd. However, just when Subai thought he could use a gentle gesture to make Xiao Hui leave Chuzhou, another face suddenly appeared on Xiao Hui's forehead, that of a very small woman. The woman's face showed a strong sense of distortion and struggle, and she kept roaring. "Why harm me? Why should you harm me? Why? Why?" As the woman screamed, the temperature in the toilet began to drop rapidly. Xiao Hui, who was almost unable to resist in front of Subai's breath, began to struggle at this time. Click. Subai took out his gun without hesitation and pointed it at Xiao Hui's eyebrows. The muzzle of the Hellfire shotgun was pressed against Xiao Hui's skin, and the breath of death slowly flowed down the muzzle. The woman on the forehead immediately calmed down from the hysteria before, because she could feel that Subai had the ability to destroy herself in an instant. No matter what form of life it was, as long as she still had self-awareness, then, for death and the end, the fear is definitely there. "Don't compare yourself to me, I'm too lazy to listen." Subai's voice was cold and indifferent. He really didn't mind killing Xiao Hui with one shot here, even if the situation would be a bit difficult to deal with, even if it would be very bad for Chuzhou, even if it meant that he had to do something many aftermaths. However, as the woman's face appeared on Xiao Hui's forehead, Subai knew that this matter had become more complicated than he expected. For complicated matters, cutting the mess with a quick knife is often the best solution. Xiao Hui was not a pure zombie, but a person whose body was integrated into the body by an evil spirit. Subai didn't know why, but the integration of the evil spirit was in an extremely coordinated pattern, like a natural initiative from both parties. Except that the evil spirit did not occupy the magpie's nest, but lived in Xiao Hui's body. Xiao Hui did not reject the evil spirit at all, and the two parties coexisted in a friendly manner. But humans and ghosts have different paths. Although the laws of heaven in the real world are not as sensitive as those in Subai's previous story world, basic normal boundaries still exist. This combination of man and ghost, like honey mixed with oil, eventually caused various changes. The most obvious change is that Xiaohui may have been a normal ordinary person, but as the evil spirit's death breath in her body continued to exude and penetration, her body has already acquiesced to her own death, and at the same time, it has opened another new state, that is, zombies. It's just that Xiaowai is now in a vague zone between zombies and living people, so she can continue to appear as a living person and participate in various social activities, but she has no way to resist the constant changes in her body. For example, the fingernails have already shown signs of zombies, and even if Subai doesn't take action, she will continue to show more signs of zombies in the future. Now she can still lie to Chu Zhao that she is wearing black nail polish on her nails. Slowly, when her skin starts to turn blue and when there is no more water coming out of her lower body due to the movement of the piston, she probably won't be able to lie anymore. I can leave him, and I can also leave her. She is my niece, and I don't want to treat her like this. Although she did it voluntarily, I feel very uncomfortable, really. The woman's face began to cry non-stop, and Subai's brows began to frown deeper and deeper. Subai is not a person who likes to listen to stories very much, because he has become a storyteller in the hands of horror broadcasters before, and Subai has never been very fond of such tragic stories of bitterness and drama. No matter how pitiful and tragic you are, what does it have to do with Chu Zhao? If you pester him and be with him, even if you don't do it intentionally, you will continue to suck the yang energy away from Chu Zhao. Now Chu Zhao is young and has strong yang energy, but now it is much sluggish. If Chu Zhao is in his 50s or 60s, maybe after getting along like this, he is now sick, or even terminally ill. Help me, please, help me. My niece went to the police academy and became a police officer just to help me. To help me. The woman's face began to plead with Subai. Subai slowly closed his eyes, and the finger on the trigger began to slowly exert force. Jingle. There was a crisp sound, and a strange-looking ring fell from Xiao Hui's body and rolled to Subai's feet. This ring is not a diamond ring, nor is it the kind set with gold. Not to mention the shape is weird, and the color is very dark, a bit like a crude handicraft. However, the ring actually exuded bursts of cold aura, especially Subai, who felt this aura most clearly. Holding the gun with one hand, he continued to press it against Xiao Hui's eyebrows, then bent down and picked up the ring with the other hand. The ring actually contains majestic resentment. This resentment is very pure, but also very terrifying. Is this a quid pro quo? A smile appeared at the corner of Subai's mouth. He was not a person who abided by treaties. I can see that you care about your friends. Chu Zhao and Xiao Hui are together because they really like each other. It's my fault. My existence and Xiao Hui's tolerance for me have caused this situation. I also want to be free, but I can't. My soul and the deepest bond have not been found yet. I have to find it to resolve my obsession. Even if it disappears, I am willing to do so. These two young men are really a good match. I was the one who harmed my niece. Please, help me find that thing, help me find that thing, and I will leave her body. Return her to your friend, and she will return to normal. Before I dissipate, I will take away everything in her body that should not belong to her. She will become an ordinary person again. Really, believe me, okay. In fact, falling out of love is a blow to a man, but it is also a kind of growth, which will make him more mature. When he said this, Subai's fingers began to slowly press down. However, at this moment, a sinister and serious voice suddenly came from Subai's mind. This voice was very familiar to Subai, because it was exactly host of horror radio. Find Wang Shui's bonding object and resolve her obsession. This is what you should do, and it is also what everyone wants to see. In fact, many things in the world not only have one side, but also have many other sides. There are often many common things hidden under a typical example, but they are not so lucky and it is difficult to attract people's attention. However, they are equally wonderful and cannot be missed by us. This is the realistic task of terror broadcasting. It came so suddenly, so unprepared, that Subai was a little shocked. He had seen the news before that the horror broadcast would be on hiatus for 3 months. During these 3 months, no more listeners would be transported into the story world, but it seemed that the horror broadcast was going to be on hiatus for 3 months. Broadcasting is not completely silent. The control and maintenance of the real world still exist. This real-world task is the best illustration. Actually, falling out of love is a blow to a man, but it is also a kind of growth, which will make him more mature. When Subai said this, he suddenly put down his gun, but Chu Zhao is my brother, my friend since childhood, his girlfriend, and the woman he likes. If I can, I will help her, or help him. Xiao Hui's eyes were filled with tears, and the woman's face was also filled with tears at this time. 1994, Shanghai University, Dormitory Area C, Building 5, Dormitory 103. After saying this, the woman's face fell into a kind of exhaustion, and she slowly returned to Xiao Hui's body. Xiao Hui turned back to an ordinary person, and knelt down in front of Subai dejectedly. I have been lacking energy in the past 2 days. I wanted to type in the afternoon, but my mind was groggy, so I went to sleep for a while and started writing. There are still 2 chapters today. I will try to finish them before 12 o'clock and send them out to keep everyone waiting. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Disiao. Chapter 148. Subai walked back to his seat, sat down, picked up a glass of orange juice, and drank it by himself. Chu Zhao and Suner had communicated before, but they didn't talk much now and continued to eat their own. However, after a while, Chu Zhao's cell phone rang. Chu Zhao answered the phone. Huh? Not feeling well? Want to go back and rest? Okay, I'll ask for leave for you. After a while, Xiao Hui walked in, and Chu Zhao also stood up and looked at his girlfriend anxiously. I'm sorry, I'm a little unwell. I want to go back and rest first. I neglected sister Suner and brother Bai. Xiao Hui bowed and apologized to Suner and brother Bai respectively. This is a girl who knows etiquette very well and can also explain from the side. Her tutor is really good. It's okay. Let Chu Zhao take you back first and have a good rest, Suner said. Have a good rest. Subai put down the orange juice in his hand and lightly flicked the wall of the cup with his fingers. Xiao Hui lowered his head, turned around and left first. Chu Zhao made a sign to Subai and Suner, and caught up with his girlfriend to take her home. Subai and Suner sat face to face for a while, and Suner was about to leave. At this time, if he continued to eat, it seemed that there was no taste anymore. Would you like to go out with me and go for a ride later, or should I take you back to your house now? I have a house in Shanghai, but it's not my home. I'd rather stay in a hotel. It's up to you. Suner picked up her phone. I'll go check out. Wait, sit down for a while, I'll ask you for help if I need anything. Suner looked at Subai with some doubts and sat back down again. What's up? Subai sent the information he had received from Xiao Hui to Suner. Check this for me. 1994, Shanghai University, Dormitory Area C, Building 5, Dormitory 103. Suner frowned slightly and said with some surprise, why are you interested in this? Oh, it seems I have found the right person. Do you know about this? Just from these messages, you can tell what happened, indicating that Suner is very familiar with this matter. Although Suner may have just been born at that time, Subai lived with his parents in Chengdu most of the time when he was a child, and did not have a long-term relationship. I live in Shanghai, so I don't have any intuitive impression of these clues. You should ask Chu Zhao about this. It was his father who was involved in this case. It was a drug poisoning case. It happened at Shanghai University, and 1994 was indeed that year, right? Because of this case, Chu Zhao's father was under a lot of pressure, and he didn't even have time to go to the hospital when Chu Zhao was born. This is what my mother told me before. Poisoning case. Subai tapped his fingers lightly on the table. Was this case very sensational at the time? Suner nodded. It was indeed very sensational, but later it was suppressed and the media were also dismissed, so reports in this area gradually fell silent. I want to see some information about this case. Can you find it? I am a soldier, not a policeman. Again, why don't you ask Chu Zhao? He has just been promoted. Wouldn't it be very convenient to help you transfer files and files? It's inconvenient. We can't let him know about this. Subai gently crossed his hands. The reason is not that I can't tell you, but you have to help me keep it a secret from him. Say it. Suner acted like she was all ears. Chu Zhao's girlfriend should be related to the deceased in the drug poisoning case you just mentioned. Suner's eyes suddenly became sharp, and one hand began to spin a knife and fork on the dining table. Then, that woman must have had ulterior motives in contacting Chu Zhao. Subai had a funny look on his face. Uncle Chu, did you really do something back then? You are not an outsider. Suner nodded. Uncle Chu was indeed under a lot of pressure during that incident. Suner pointed to the sky with his finger. This means that the pressure comes from above. Everything is left unsaid. Subai was silent for a while. How do you know so much about it? You said it yourself before, you are a soldier, not a policeman. Hey, are you reviewing my tone? Suner wasn't angry, and just continued, I have an uncle who was a lawyer at the time. He was very concerned about this case and even went to see my dad specifically. I wanted to rely on my father's influence to expose this matter, and of course, my uncle also planned to use this opportunity to gain fame. But in the end, it still failed, right? Yes, it failed. Suner pouted. You know, in this world, doing just things is wonderful, but it must be within one's ability. I understand. Subai really understood. Since the person named Ziyawai is related to the deceased in the drug poisoning case, then this matter cannot be taken lightly. I remember that the file is still in my dad's study cabinet. If you want to see it, come with me. Let's go home and watch together. Okay, but wait, let me settle the child first. Subai went to the hotel on this floor to get a room, and then left the little guy and Jixiang in the room. Before leaving, he patted Jixiang's head. Jixiang said meow impatiently. Of course he knew. Whatever Subai wanted him to do, he would do it to protect the little guy without Subai reminding him. The little guy also knew that Subai was going out to do some work at this time, so he didn't cry or make a fuss, just lay on Jixiang's body and watch the cartoon. After walking out of the building, Suner smiled slightly and said, You just left the child alone in the hotel. Don't worry, it's okay. Subai got into Suner's car. Let's go. Suner got into the car, started the car, and asked for the last time, that child is very cute. I know. Suner sighed and started the car. About 20 minutes later, he drove into a residential complex that didn't look very prosperous but was extremely stylish. The people standing guard at the entrance of the residential complex were not security guards but soldiers. The car passed the security check and drove inside, stopping under a building. This is Suner's home. Her parents are no longer in Shanghai. This is her previous home. But judging from Suner's intention, those files and other things should not have been moved. After entering the house and going upstairs, Suner opened his father's study, squatted down, opened a drawer inside, and rummaged around. Soon, a yellow document bag was taken out and handed to Subai. Subai naturally pulled over a chair and sat down, opened the document bag, took out the dossier information inside and started reading. I'll make you a cup of tea. Thanks. Suner closed the door when she left, while Subai continued to scan the information. A large part of the information was handwritten. From November 24, 1994, Wang Shui began to experience strange symptoms of poisoning. First she had a stomachache and couldn't eat, then, December 5, she had stomach discomfort, and finally, December 8, the hair began to fall off and all fell off within a few days. On December 23, Wang Shui was admitted to the gastroenterology ward of Shanghai Tongren Hospital. Although the cause of the disease was not found, after a month of hospitalization, Wang Shui's condition improved and she grew hair, discharged from hospital on January 23, 1995. On February 20, 1995, the winter vacation ended and the new semester began. Wang Shui returned to school. On March 6, 1995, Wang Shui's condition worsened. She suffered severe pain in her legs and felt dizzy. Wang Shui's parents sent her to the Third Hospital of Shanghai Medical University for treatment. On March 9, 1995, Wang Shui's parents took Wang Shui to the neurology specialist clinic of Union Medical College Hospital. After receiving the consultation, Professor Li told Wang Shui's mother that it was too similar to a case of salt poisoning at Tsinghua University in the 1960s. However, because Wang Shui denied having a history of exposure to methane salts, and Union Medical College Hospital did not have the conditions to do the test, Union Medical College Hospital did not conduct a methane poisoning test. On March 15, 1995, her symptoms worsened, and she began to experience facial muscle paralysis, ophthalmoplegia, and loss of spontaneous breathing. Wang Shui was admitted to the neurology ward of Union Medical College Hospital. Union Hospital treated her as acute disseminated cerebrospinal radiculoneuritis. Diagnosis and treatment. Union Hospital conducted multiple tests on Wang Shui, including HIV, spinal tap, MRI, immune system, chemical poisoning, anti-nuclear antibodies, nuclear antigen antibodies and Lyme disease, etc., but in addition to Lyme disease, the test results for other items were all negative. On April 10, 1995, Wang Shui's high school classmate and a 92-year-old student in the Department of Mechanics of Shanghai University translated the unknown illness into English and sent a distress email to Yusen through the internet. Afterwards, we received 1,635 replies from 18 countries and regions around the world, of which about one-third believed that this was a typical phenomenon of drug poisoning. Because the replies on the internet suspected drug poisoning, when Wang Shui's parents learned that the Shanghai Occupational Disease Prevention and Control Institute could conduct drug poisoning identification, they secretly obtained Wang Shui's urine with the help of a conscientious Union Medical College doctor. Cerebrospinal fluid, blood, nails, and hair came to Shanghai Occupational Disease Prevention and Control Institute for testing on April 28, 1995. On the same day, a test report was issued, which concluded that Wang Shui had been poisoned twice. After the second poisoning, the level of methane in Wang Shui's body far exceeded the lethal dose. It was suspected that someone had deliberately poisoned her. It was also recommended to take Prussian blue to detoxify. Wang Shui started taking the symptomatic drug Prussian blue. On the day of taking it, the concentration of ions in the blood began to decrease. A month later, the was excreted from the body. However, due to the excessive retention of ions in the body for too long, Wang Shui's nervous system was severely damaged, her vision was almost completely lost, and her body functions were also severely damaged, and she died soon after. There was a lot of information below, but Subai frowned as he looked at it. He suddenly remembered the Fudan poisoning case that happened in recent years. It seemed to have a very similar plot to this one, all relying on this kind of strong damage to the human body. Sexual substances were used as the source of the poison, and the murderers were all students. Moreover, the murderers in both cases did not tell the police or the hospital what kind of poison the victims had been poisoned, causing the victims to miss the best time to detoxify. In the end, they were completely die. The Fudan poisoning case was even more egregious. The murderer was a roommate in the same dormitory. However, he went to the hospital several times to visit the victim who was poisoned by himself, but he did not reveal any information. It was like watching the victim slide into death step by step. Abyss. Subai circled the names of several key figures in the document, and then flipped through it. A photo fell in the document, which was a photo of the deceased Wang Shui. However, when he saw this old photo, Subai's hand suddenly froze. The people in this photo. Why is it Zaya? Why? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 149. The study door was pushed open, and Suner walked in with a cup of tea. Subai also subconsciously pressed the photo in the palm of his hand, pretending that nothing happened, and continued to look through the documents. Since this matter has involved the actual task of terrorist broadcasting, it is not something ordinary people can easily participate in. Subai does not want Suner to get too deep into this matter, otherwise, will he be able to do it by then? It's hard to say whether he has the ability to protect her. After taking the teacup and placing it on the table, Subai put the information back into the document bag. Take it away. This information has not been touched for many years. My dad will not think of it again. Yes, Subai nodded, took the information bag in his hand, and stood up. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. It's hard to come to my house once. Let's go now. Agent Su, are you really here to investigate the case? Haha, next time. Subai waved his hand, walked down the stairs, walked to the entrance, opened the door and walked out. The old yellowed photo made Subai feel uneasy for a moment. Suner was holding the stairs with one hand and holding the tea that had not yet been taken a sip with the other, and shook her head in a dazed manner. She suddenly felt that she had not seen each other for a few months, but the Subai in front of her seemed to be a different person. She felt so strange and strange. Although the Subai in the past had a more withdrawn personality, he was different from those like her. Friends are completely open to letting go, but now, Subai obviously has a clear gap between himself and Chu Zhao, especially when he intends to bring the relationship between the two parties closer to the past, but he deliberately, while constantly reinforcing this layer of membrane, it seemed that he deliberately wanted to keep a distance from himself and others, and it was very obvious and deliberate. He felt it, and Chu Zhao also clearly felt it. Or, you don't like women, what you like is. I don't know why, but when I thought of this, a smile appeared on the corner of Suner's mouth, and all the previous unhappiness disappeared. Subai walked out of the community and stopped a taxi on the roadside. This time he did not choose to call Chu Zhao first, but went directly to where Chu Zhao lived. Zia Y was the trigger person for the real-life mission given to him by the terrorist broadcast. But I was a little too preconceived before, and really regarded this trigger character as an NPC in a computer game standing motionless, waiting for players to hand in tasks. In fact, Zia Y lied to herself. More than half an hour later, Subai came downstairs to the apartment Chu Zhao rented. In fact, Chu Zhao's family is not short of money, but because of his special status, some things must be as low-key as possible. There is no way around it. Downstairs, Subai observed first and confirmed that the Chu Zhao family's awareness of prevention was really poor. He was still a policeman, but his home was probably very vulnerable to burglars because the Chu Zhao family lived on the second floor. It was very high, but his house did not install anti-theft guard rails, and even the kitchen window was wide open. Not to mention thieves, ordinary people could easily climb into Chu Chuan along the illegally built shed of the residence on the ground floor. Zhao's kitchen. Without much hesitation, Subai sprinted, first climbed onto the shed, then grabbed it with one hand and jumped into the kitchen of Chu Zhao's house. The kitchen was very tidy and it could be seen that it had been cleaned regularly. It should be Zia Y, No, I don't know if it's Zai or Wang Shui. Beyond the kitchen is a small living room, and then 2 bedrooms. At this time, Chu Zhao might have sent Xiao Hui home and then gone back to work. Sudbai's shoes walked across the smooth floor of the living room. Before he even approached the bedroom, he heard the urgent breathing sounds of a man and a woman coming from inside through the door. The woman's voice was sometimes high-pitched and sometimes tactful, while the man's voice was like an old cow plows the ground, making a rhythmic grunting sound. This is very embarrassing. Sudbai now regretted why he didn't knock on the door and came in. Why did he climb through the window when he had nothing to do for convenience? At this time, the man in the bedroom let out a rapid cry, like a piece of music that flowed out for thousands of miles at the end. Sudbai looked at it and then returned to the kitchen. The bedroom door was pushed open from the inside, and the man came out and complained. "We're doing it at noon. It's so hot. Can we make an appointment for an evening or night next time?" Sudbai's fingers suddenly trembled. The voice was not Chu Zhao, but someone else. At Chu Zhao's house, another man who had just finished having sex appeared. Sudbai's eyes narrowed slightly. Was his good buddy given a green hat like this? Hateful, I work as a nanny here, and this house doesn't belong to me. I saw that they wouldn't come back this afternoon, so I called you over. They work so hard to serve you, and you're not satisfied yet. Women also began to act coquettishly. Okay, it's my fault, it's not easy for my career. I also know that it's hard for you to be a nanny, but don't worry, brother, I promise to behave like a good person. When the time comes, we will also buy a house, and you don't have to go out to serve others, you can just take care of your children at home. Hearing this, Sudbai couldn't help but had nothing to say. What kind of nanny did that boy Chu Zhao hire? He actually brought his little lover home to do that while the owner was not at home, and that bedroom was obviously where Chu Zhao slept. In the master bedroom, it is obvious that this nanny still pays attention to some sentiments. Is there anything to eat? I'm a little hungry. Yes, there are some in the kitchen. I'll get some for you. The babysitter started walking towards the kitchen. Sudbai shook his head. Since Chu Zhao and Xiao Hui were not at home, his trip here was a bit superfluous. Perhaps, no matter whether Chu Zhao's girlfriend was Xiao Hui or Wang Shui, they were not right. Chu Zhao had that kind of absolute hostility. At least, Sudbai felt that from the time he put the muzzle of the gun against the woman's forehead, if the other party wanted to have other thoughts towards Chu Zhao, she would really have to think carefully. At this moment, the sound of a key opening the door came from the other side. The little nanny immediately turned pale with fright. Apparently, she called her little lover to have sex with her in the master bedroom while her employer was not at home. When her employer came back and opened the door and saw all this, she would definitely be fired. The man who had promised to make a fortune before was now frightened and at a loss. However, the door kept hearing the sound of the key being unlocked, but there was no success and the door was never pushed open. "Axiong, did you lock the door?" the man asked. Axiong was a little confused. She seemed to remember that she had not locked the door, but it was best to do so now. She calmed down at this time and immediately pushed the man towards the balcony. "Quickly, jump off the balcony and run. I'll go and clean up the bed in the bedroom. Fortunately, I put paper towels on it beforehand and didn't get the sheets wet." The man understood immediately, picked up his clothes and ran up to the balcony. The second floor was not very high anyway. The man turned over and jumped down, grabbing the balcony railing with one hand. When he landed, his feet slipped a little and he fell to the ground. He fell to the ground, his skin was a little scratched, but there was no other serious problem. The man did not dare to delay and ran further away while getting dressed. He knew that this family was a policeman. Sudbai, who had been hiding in the kitchen, found it a bit funny. Which one was right? And why did Chu Zhao invite a nanny to come over? Was it specifically to take care of Xiao Hui? Subai knew Chu Zhao's temperament. Even if his house was a mess, he wouldn't want strangers to come into his house to clean it, and he probably wouldn't want to find such a young nanny. Come on, look at me, I'm so confused, I took a nap so much. The little nanny explained loudly as she ran to open the door. Click. The door was opened by the nanny. Subai, who was standing in the kitchen, suddenly felt a chill on his back. Immediately afterwards, the little nanny made a sound of woo-woo. And her feet kept stamping on the ground, looking very painful. Subai walked out of the kitchen. He saw that half of the babysitter's body was inside the door and her upper body was outside the door. She was motionless now, and her whole body continued to maintain this weird posture. Subai quickened his pace and rushed directly to the door, but there was nothing outside the door. One of the nanny's hands was holding the door handle, and her hands were curled up in an unnatural way, as if they were tied in a knot. She also hung herself on the handle, which allowed her body to maintain this posture without falling even after death. The little nanny had a horrified expression on her face, as if she had seen something terrible. Subai suddenly felt a little ridiculous. He was in the kitchen, and then there was someone who didn't know what the hell he was, killing someone at the door, but he didn't have time to rush over, and he didn't even know what the other person looked like. Have no idea. Suddenly, Subai's eyes fell on the wall at the entrance of the corridor. There was a water palm print there. It was not very clear, and it was also evaporating now, but it did exist, and it continued to go upstairs. The more it went up, the deeper it became. Clearly, this shows that the thing did not escape after killing the nanny, but continued to walk upstairs. Subai raised his head and looked up, and then decisively started to chase upwards. After climbing 3 floors in a row, Subai finally heard the sound of the key opening the door, as if the key had been completely inserted into the hole. The ground is turning but it still won't open. Old guy, you can't even open a door. A woman's dissatisfied voice came from the house. She obviously thought that her family could not open the door when they came back, but she came over to open the door. Subai happened to turn from the staircase at this moment. He. Not only did he kill people in front of me, but he actually wanted to kill people in succession, not being so arrogant. Turning around with inertia, Subai saw a vague black shadow next to the opposite door. He immediately pulled out his Hellfire shotgun without hesitation and fired at the black shadow. Trigger. Boom. Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 150. Boom. This is Subai's first time shooting since he exchanged for the Hellfire shotgun. The reason is very simple. The bullets are too expensive. Subai really can't bear to find an open place to practice shooting for no reason. It's too luxurious. It's so luxurious for Subai. Both the young and the old felt pain in their flesh. However, precisely because of this, I actually have more expectations for this gun in my heart. The price itself is already a high price of 1000 story points, and even the bullets require special exchange. This gun should not disappoint. The moment the gun rang out, Subai felt his palm tremble slightly, and even had an uncontrollable feeling that it was about to fly away from his hand, and he almost threw the gun out of his hand. It's not that Subai has never played with guns. He has had many opportunities to touch guns. His level is quite good even among amateurs. He is also aware of the recoil, but he was still frightened by the recoil of the Hellfire shotgun. Jumped, but fortunately it did not miss. The shotgun can make up for the difference in shooting accuracy to a certain extent. In an instant, a ball of blood-colored particles was ejected from the muzzle of the gun and hit the black shadow. There was a faint smell of soot in the air, and there was a trace of magic in the smell. Subai didn't know the specific enchantment effect, but the results before him made him stunned by the power of this gun. The black shadow was directly scattered, and even the entire body was shattered and turned into minced meat on the ground. Only the hand remained intact and fell to the ground. Subai took a step forward and stepped on this hand. This hand even subconsciously tried to hold it up and prepare to leave, but under Subai's feet, it could only struggle to death. The puddle of minced meat on the ground was obviously not fresh, proving that there should be a person in the black shadow just now, but except for this hand, the rest of the person's body could not be considered a normal human being. The door was pushed open, and it was a woman who was about 40 years old. She was wearing pajamas. She must have been taking a nap. Seeing the scene in front of her house, the woman rolled her eyes and fainted immediately. Subai confirmed that his back was turned to this woman, so he was not worried that his identity would be exposed later. In fact, Subai had done a real-world mission with the monk before. When performing the real-world mission, the audience was equivalent to help the horror broadcaster, so the horror broadcaster will naturally provide some help, such as helping you with the aftermath, etc. Otherwise, once a listener is discovered or filmed while performing a real-life mission, it is possible that he will have to become a real-life version of superhero. Subai still remembered the result of his first experience of a horror radio broadcast. The female white-collar worker who was killed by him with a knife was eventually ruled by the police to have died of a heart attack. Apparently, it was also a form of horror radio that wiped the air for the listeners. The roll of the butt. The tip of his shoe poked into the minced meat, and Subai found a bunch of keys. These keys were obviously old and did not match the doors in this building. It was really strange that they could be opened. No wonder. This guy kept turning the keyhole outside the house, apparently trying to keep changing keys, and then back and forth. However, this is also an effective method. If someone in the house hears this kind of noise, they will probably think that it is their family members who don't know why the door cannot be opened when they come back, so they take the initiative to open the door. Then, it is possible encountering a poisonous hand is quite like a supernatural story. Poisonous hand? It really suited the occasion. Subai squatted down and held the hand in his own. It was a man's hand, covered with calluses, and it was still wet. There were blisters emerging from the palm of his hand, which had been left there before. The palm marks on the wall probably came from this. Even though it was being pinched, this hand was still very dishonest and kept trying to break free from Subai's restraint. "Are you wise?" Subai asked, with a death threat. This hand was still struggling, obviously indifferent to Subai's threat. Subai frowned. This hand gave him the feeling that it was only for impulsive killing without any intelligence. He originally thought that if this hand could write, he would be able to get some information from it, but it was obvious that I'm going to be disappointed. This hand feels more like a beast, not even rational. Subai dropped the hand on the ground and pointed his gun at it, but after thinking about it, he turned to hold the head of the gun with his backhand and smashed it with the butt of the gun. The hand was immediately smashed, and the hellfire dispersed. Subai had tested the effectiveness of shotguns as blunt weapons, and he was not disappointed this time. Subai walked downstairs. However, what made him feel a little confused was that the door of Chu Zhao's house was actually closed. Subai remembered that when he chased upstairs, he did not pick up the body of the nanny. The nanny should continue to keep her hands tied to the doorknob. After walking downstairs, Subai reached out and pushed the door. The door was closed and could not be pushed open. Someone came over during this break and brought the body into the house without crying or making a fuss. Who could it be? Who? Questions came from the room, with a bit of laziness. It belongs to the nanny. A smile appeared on the corner of Subai's mouth, and it became more and more interesting. This is not the story world, this is the real world. Subai is really surprised that such an incredible situation can occur in the real world, but it also gives him a sense of excitement. Yes. Stimulate. Subai felt that he was really crazy. Even though from a rational point of view, Subai was very happy about the 3 months of the horror broadcast being suspended, but from an emotional point of view, he was also obviously disappointed. Unknowingly, Subai's mentality has changed from the way he used to get pleasure from killing people when he formed the Killing Club to now constantly entering the world of incredible stories to experience the kind of death struggle. 3 months without a story world to experience, for Subai, was a bit like a young and energetic young man who had tasted forbidden fruit for the first time, facing 3 months of abstinence, sexual intercourse, and not being able to masturbate with his hands. At this moment, someone came over on the stairs downstairs. It was Chu Zhao. He held Xiaowai's hand and was walking up step by step. Chu Zhao's other hand was also holding a plastic bag with some medicine. They should have just come back from the hospital. Subai, why are you here? Chu Zhao was a little surprised when he saw Subai standing at the door of his house. I have something to come to see you for, Subai replied. Then, Subai's eyes fell on Xiao Hui. The yellowed photo in the information bag explained a lot of questions. Why does Xiao Hui look like Wang Xiaowai now? Snow is exactly the same, they are definitely not twins, nor are they some cliché plot where the older sister dies and the younger sister comes to seek revenge. Xiao Hui avoided Subai's gaze a little, but she seemed just right, showing her fear of Subai very naturally. Are you Xiao Hui or Wang Shui? Who is that female soul that appears? Come in and sit for a while. No, there are people at home. I just hired a nanny from an agency a while ago. Didn't you knock on the door? The door to the house was opened when Chu Zhao was speaking. Subai clearly felt a coolness on the back of his hand and the skin on that side from the moment the door was opened. Xiao Hui also looked at the door of her room with some surprise. Obviously, she also felt this feeling, but then her eyes inadvertently glanced at Subai. She probably felt that this feeling was caused by Subai. In fact, Subai is just a pure encounterer, not a designer. You are back. Is Sister Hui okay? The nanny walked out enthusiastically, took Xiao Hui's hand from Chu Zhao, and then helped Xiao Hui in. Chu Zhao did not rush in, but stood in front of Subai, handed Subai a cigarette, and asked curiously, you really have nothing to hide from me? Subai shook his head. Telling Chu Zhao about the matter at this time was obviously a bit confusing, because the development of the matter was even beyond Subai's own control and expectations. It was obviously aimed at this. Before, Subai thought that this was just a routine and simple task process. The aggrieved and crying Xiao Hui in the toilet was an NPC who issued the task. After accepting the task, he could go and do it with confidence, and then come back and hand in the task after getting the things. Everything was solved perfectly, but from the time he forced Xiaowai to reveal himself in the toilet to now, Subai discovered that the danger surrounding Chu Zhao had never disappeared. Subai already had the intention of knocking Chu Zhao unconscious, then tying him up and locking him up in a place for a few days, and then releasing him after he solved everything. Although he was his good friend, the reason why he wanted to it was also because of him that he was involved. Although Subai didn't want him to have any accidents, he also didn't want him to constantly mess up his thinking rhythm, and at the same time, he also made himself a little shy. Chu Zhao nodded and motioned for Subai to enter the house with him. The two men sat on the coffee table, smoking silently and not talking to each other. Xiao Hui had already gone to the bedroom to rest, and the nanny diligently made tea and brought it over. After entering the house, Subai's attention actually fell on the little nanny. This woman who was still here stealing men and then died, is now alive and busy around him, which makes Subai feel a little funny, and at the same time, she also has an extremely weird feeling. After putting down the teacup, the nanny walked back to the kitchen. Subai touched his nose inadvertently, and then looked at the back of the nanny. What's wrong? You're attracted to him. It's simple, I can help you get it done. Chu Zhao actually started to turn into a pimp at this time. Subai was a little bit dumbfounded. Is this guy really just a worm? Didn't you see that when the little nanny walks in slippers, her heels are off the ground and her whole body is propped up? Terror broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 151. Picking up the teacup, putting it in his hand, feeling the temperature of the tea, Chu Zhao was still joking with himself with a smile, saying that his taste was becoming more and more unique. Subai shook his head slightly, feeling Chu Zhao should indeed be knocked unconscious and carried away. No matter what happens next, at least Chu Zhao's safety will not be endangered. Looking at this guy's sunny appearance now, he really deserves a beating. The nanny at home is dead and his girlfriend is a zombie. He is really capable. No matter how unlucky an ordinary person is, he probably can't join in such a happy landlord fight. Difficulty. However, just when Subai stood up and pretended to look at the decoration style of Chu Zhao's house, walking around and coming to behind Chu Zhao, he just raised his hand, and suddenly there was a throbbing in his heart, a feeling of panic. This is a vague feeling, and it seems to be a vague reminder, as if I have knocked Chu Zhao out, and things will become more complicated and confusing. After all, Chu Zhao is now a link, connecting many details and clues, and is indispensable in the story. In order to protect him and keep him away from this matter, it will greatly increase the difficulty for him to complete this real-life task, which is equivalent to his own make it more difficult for yourself. Is this a reminder? A horror radio reminder to listeners to help themselves complete real-life tasks? A smile appeared at the corner of Subai's mouth. He was really flattered, but who said he was a psychopath? The main reason why Chu Zhao chose to join the murder club was because of himself. He knew about his mental illness, so he was willing to join the club as a policeman for himself. Gu Fan did it for Sun'er. Although Chu Zhao's reason at the time was that he hated being a policeman, but Subai knew that this was just an excuse for him. No matter how much he hated being a policeman, he would not get that kind of satisfaction by killing people. Boom. Subai slashed Chu Zhao's neck with his palm, and Chu Zhao fainted. Carrying Chu Zhao on his shoulders, Subai didn't say anything or explain anything. He just planned to go out. He wanted to arrange a good place for Chu Zhao. The best place should be his own home. Go, and then take Jixiang and the little guy to your home, and use Jixiang's power to protect Chu Zhao. At that time, Jixiang would have eliminated the dangers near his home in order to protect the little one's safety. Normally, Subai would not be able to control the pet left behind by Lichi. Suddenly there was a crisp sound in the kitchen, and the nanny came out again. When she saw Subai carrying Chu Zhao, the nanny did not show any surprise, and still smiled lightly. Road. Where to go? Subai didn't explain, and didn't bother to explain. He opened the door and walked out of the house. The people in the family are neither humans nor ghosts. Chu Zhao's car was parked downstairs in the community, and the car keys were still on him. Subai took the car keys, put Chu Zhao in the passenger seat, and then drove directly out of the community. Behind the door and window of Chu Zhao's bedroom stood Xiao Hui, and behind the kitchen window stood the nanny. Both women were smiling and looking at the scene very indifferently. Subai saw the scene through the reflector, a smile appeared on his lips, and he stretched out his hand out of the window in a serious manner, waving his hand to say goodbye. Half an hour later, the car drove downstairs of the hotel. Subai went up alone and picked up the little guy and Jixiang. After Jixiang got into the car, he saw another man who had been knocked unconscious in the car. He seemed to understand something. Its fur actually stood up and it bared its teeth at Subai, looking very angry. The reason it was angry was because Subai actually put this man who obviously had an ominous aura with the little guy, which was actively causing disaster. Subai restarted the car. Seeing Ji Xiang's appearance, he sighed and patted the steering wheel. He is my buddy who I grew up playing with. This is my son. No matter who they are, I can never give up. Jixiang, I took advantage of you this time. If there is a chance in the future, I will compensate you, okay? Ji Xiang shook his head, his anger still there, with a hint of disdain in his cat eyes. Obviously, it was very dissatisfied with how Subai dared to take advantage of it without saying hello. Of course, the most important thing was that Ji Xiang could see that Chu Zhao was an extremely ominous person who was involved in right and wrong, so he kept him by his side. Staying with little ones is also a sign of irresponsibility. Seeing this look, Subai's heart was filled with fire. He controlled the steering wheel with one hand and turned around and pointed at Jixiang with the other hand and cursed. Lizzie has left. You can only follow me now. Damn it, believe it or not, you left me. Not to mention this God's will, the terrorist broadcast may really give you a real-world mission to hunt you down. Don't do it to me in front of Uncle Chong, you are just a stray cat that has been thrown away. Besides, he is my son, not your son. Ask him whether he wants to follow me or you. If you don't come, you can get out of the car and get out of here. Subai pressed down the rear window, and the wind blew in, bringing with it a warm atmosphere. Ji Xiang was stunned. He didn't expect that Subai would actually talk to him like this, because usually even if he showed such a cold attitude, Subai would try his best to apologize to him, but today Subai was like a powder keg. It will explode at one point. The little guy was also frightened by Subai's expression and tone at this time, and reached out to scratch the cat's tail. In fact, it's no wonder that Subai and Chu Zhao have a good relationship with him. If he knocks him out and leaves him alone, it would be unsafe to put him somewhere else. In addition, the clues to the actual mission have been disrupted by him. What he was about to face would be an extremely complicated situation. At this time, the cat was still looking at him. How could Subai be in a good mood? In the end, Ji Xiang did not choose to jump out of the window, but just lay down silently, looking at the little guy with a hint of helplessness and doting in his eyes. When he arrived at his home, Subai tied Chu Zhao to a chair, then carried the little guy to his bedroom, and Jixiang followed him without saying a word. Subai grabbed the little guy's hand, put it on his lips and kissed it. The little guy giggled. He liked the feeling of interacting intimately with Subai. Good boy, it's me, the father, who dragged you into trouble this time. It's my fault. But don't worry, no matter what happens to you in the future, I will be by your side. I took the initiative to take you there last time. The thing about the demon cave will never happen again, even if I die. Finally, after rubbing the little guy's head, Subai walked out of the house and got into the car. He placed the 2 Hellfire shotguns on the passenger seat. Subai took out the envelope. There were several places he marked on it. One of them Subai felt was the most suspicious, and that was Chu Zhao's father. You must know that Chu Zhao's father was responsible for handling this case at that time. Xiao Hui had told herself before that what Wang Shui needed was the binding object. Subai guessed that the binding object should be the real thing that caused Wang Shui's death. The thing is, possibly even, Ta substance. Wang Shui died from this thing. Even if she succeeded in expelling the substance from her body, it still could not change the outcome of her body being seriously damaged and her death. It is very possible that this substance is Wang Shui's fetter. Even if Chu Zhao's father was under some pressure from above at that time, which caused the case to be covered up and dropped, according to the character of Chu Zhao's father, the hand should be there's probably something. Looking at several elders in the family, Gu Fan's parents specialize in scientific research, Sun's parents are from a standard red family, and in Chu Zhao's family, his grandfather and his father actually climbed up the ladder on their own. This kind of person is very likely to leave himself a backup plan. However, Chu Zhao's father is on vacation recently. At his house in Suzhou, Chu Zhao himself said this during the previous meal. He said that his father actually has some health problems now, but he insists on carrying it for the sake of the family. This is also the reason why Chu Zhao was willing to accept the promotion, was probably because no matter how disgusted he was with the police profession, for the sake of the face of his father who was still gritting his teeth and persisting, he would not be so hypocritical. Taking the expressway, the distance from Shanghai to Suzhou is not very far. In fact, Subai now regrets a little. After taking this task, he should probably find a helper like a monk to do it together. This is allowed by the terrorist broadcast anyway. However, the effect is almost the same whether he finds it or not. Now, I really don't know anyone who is suitable to be brought over to be a mission audience, and I directly knocked Chu Zhao unconscious and transferred him. As long as the collaborator is not stupid, he will know what this means, and it is estimated that they will fall out by then. The difficulty and workload of doing this alone are indeed too great. Subai's current attitude is to take it one step at a time. After stopping at a service station under the highway to buy some water and something to eat, Subai got in the car again and drove out. Not long after driving out, Subai found a van following him. It's normal to keep following along on the highway. After all, most people follow the road. However, one time when Subai had to slow down because the car in front of him suddenly changed lanes due to erratic driving, the van in front of him actually deliberately drove over him before it was out of the way. He slowed down and continued to follow Subai. Subai simply flashed and stopped on the side of the road. After opening the door and getting out of the car, Subai suddenly wondered whether this was the story world or the real world. Why in the real world, just investigating a case, these weird things happened one after another. The van also stopped on the right behind Subai, but no one got out of the car. There was a man wearing a clown mask sitting in the van. At this time, the cold eyes were staring at Subai. The clown stretched out his hand towards Subai and wiped his neck. The threat was very obvious. In response, Subai directly raised the Hellfire shotgun. Boom! The trigger was pulled again. The clown was stunned. He seemed to have never expected Subai to be so direct. The car window shattered instantly, and the clown's upper body turned into flesh. Subai came over. He reached out and opened the door of the van directly. In the car, except for the clown, there was no one else. There were only hands moving constantly on the seats, on the windows, and in every corner of the car. There was a hint of understanding in Subai's eyes. He felt that he should understand why such unreasonable things happened one after another. This is the real world. Logically speaking, it wouldn't be so exaggerated. Unless you are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 152. Auntie, are you having nightmares again? In a luxuriously decorated bedroom, a woman about 40 years old was curled up on the corner of the bed, holding her knees with her hands, shivering. Her eyes were full of fear, and tears kept flowing out. It's so beautiful and moving that I felt pity for it. A young man in a shirt stood beside him. Seeing his aunt like this, a look of distress appeared on his face. He sat down by the bed and held his aunt in his arms. It's just a nightmare, don't be afraid, I'm here. As if she had found her backbone, the woman immediately hugged the young man tightly, buried her head in the man's arms, and cried in a voice of panic and fear. Jia Chang, I'm so scared. I'm really scared. I've been dreaming about her every day these days. I dreamed that she came to me to ask for her life. Really, I'm so scared. She's still the same as before, a little bit. Nothing has changed. If I chase my aunt in my dream, I can't escape at all. I know, it's okay, really, I'm here, what are you afraid of? Jia Chang, promise Auntie not to leave Auntie and stay with Auntie, okay? The woman raised her head and looked at the young man. I will never leave my aunt. Just like my aunt has been good to me since I was a child, I will also be good to my aunt in the future. The man gently settled her down, covered her with a quilt, and then walked out of the bedroom. He sat down on the sofa in the living room, took out his mobile phone, and dialed a number. The call was answered after 10 rings. "Hey, Soo-ji-chan, why are you calling me so late? It's been 3 months in a row without any story missions, and you can't even sleep peacefully. Chin Yiming, have you done what I asked you to do?" Soo-ji-chan lit a cigarette and held it in his hand, but did not smoke it. The other party was pretending, but Soo-ji-chan could not play with him because my aunt's condition is getting worse and worse. "Haha, you deliberately want to trick me to death, I know." Chin Yiming's voice suddenly turned cold. "Damn, I thought you simply wanted me to help you kill a few people. It's true that I owe you a favor in the story world, and I'm willing to help you do something. It's just a matter of causing some trouble. The next story world will become more difficult, but I don't care about this." "But you actually asked me to go on a real-world mission to sabotage a terrorist broadcast. Are you trying to get me killed?" Soo-ji-chan frowned in surprise. "Real-world mission? Nonsense, let me show you this picture." Soon, Chin Yiming sent a picture. Soo-ji-chan clicked on it, and the voice conversation between the two parties was still maintained. "Look at this picture. The front seat of this car is completely smashed. One of the gang members I sent to do illegal work was beaten to a pulp. I observed it and found that it was shot with one shot. Effect. One shot. One shot. In addition to the weapons exchanged in WeChat stores, can ordinary people in the real world have such incredibly powerful guns? In addition, all the hands I worked so hard to raise were smashed by this guy, and not a single one was left. Damn it, Soo-ji-chan, I have suffered a big loss this time." Soo-ji-chan looked at the picture and listened to Chin Yiming's words, and sighed. "If the woman just comes back to seek revenge, it will be easy for me to get rid of it. Generally, when a resentful ghost comes back, she will always find a living person to act as her walking companion in the world to help her seek justice or revenge. On the one hand, I can first find the resentful ghost and take action against her. On the other hand, you can also kill the spokesperson in the world, but you failed in the first and second attempts." Originally, Soo-ji-chan still had some doubts. He was just dealing with a lingering grudge. Why was it so troublesome? He failed several times. Now he finally understood that an audience was actually involved in this matter, and it was very possible. It evolved into a real-life mission of terror broadcasting. Why? This case that has been in the dust for more than 20 years actually led to a terrorist broadcaster to release a real-life mission? The mobile phone kept spinning in Soo-ji-chan's hand. "Soo-ji-chan, I advise you to stop. Anyway, I won't continue to do this. I didn't know it was a real task before, and I didn't succeed. There is probably no causal connection. Now you know, it's also clear that if you continue to take action, you will really be in big trouble. I have no choice. If someone like your mother is in danger because of this matter, or even tortured to death by the destined connection, will you stop, Soo-ji-chan?" Asked rhetorically. "I can." Chin Yiming replied without hesitation, "I really can. It's too late to worry about my own life. Why should I care about my parents' lives? But, I'm different from you." Soo-ji-chan replied, "I'm not as cold-blooded as you, or in other words, I can't be cold-blooded in this matter. But I can tell you one thing. The person doing the task in the audience doesn't seem to be a reputable guy. Maybe the task completion rate is less than 3. To you, of course, it's not worth mentioning." "Thank you for the reminder," Soo-ji-chan said, and at the same time, he heard another meaning from the other party's words. "If you insist on going on, then take it easy and don't take action directly yourself. From the side or using some of your connections, I suggest you trick a few idiots like me to help you take action." As long as you draw more blood, anyway, you have a lot of good things, so if you just pick one out as an addition, someone will definitely be willing to do it. So, what's your price? Of course Su Jiachin knew what Qin Yiming meant by saying this. A guy who could tell that he didn't care about his mother's life or death was a complete desperado. As long as he paid the right price, he would not care about the reality of the horror broadcast. He also dared to sabotage the task. All the dissatisfaction and various rhetoric of the other party were just to raise the price, just like making a deal. I want that blood jade on your body. Qin Yiming opened his mouth. Kill him and I'll give you the blood jade. Su Jiachin agreed without hesitation. There was silence on the other side of the phone, and then he said, "Did I set the price too low? Will you really give me the blood jade? How to give it to me? He is someone you have nurtured until now. Are you really willing to let him go? In front of me, you swore on the blood jade that you must kill that person. I can give you that piece of blood jade right now." "Haha, you are such a filial son, but why don't you go by yourself?" "I'm afraid of death," Su Jiachin said frankly. "I'm afraid that no one will take care of her after I die." "Okay, I'll go to your place later. You wait for me. Anyway, I'm going to die, and every time I die, I'm not afraid of starving the timid to death and starving the bold to death." "No problem." Su Jiachin hung up the phone and walked back to the bedroom with his cell phone. He looked at the sleeping woman lying on the bed. There was white liquid slowly flowing out of the corner of the woman's mouth. This scene made Su Jiachin feel very charming and moved. Chu Zhao's father does not live in the military compound, but in a very ordinary community. However, the location is good and the surrounding scenery is also very good. After all, Chu Zhao's family has adhered to the belief of keeping a low profile from old to young, and will never go for highbrow luxury. Subai first found a hunting restaurant nearby to stay, then went out to buy some things. He took the hotel room phone and ordered a dinner. In the end, because the dinner was of poor quality and he was not in the mood to eat, he drank it. A can of beer. It was already dark outside. Subai put a skull mask he bought on his face. Standing in front of the bathroom window, Subai looked at himself, wearing a black trench coat and a skull mask on his face. Subai was very satisfied with this image. I said, "Why is it so strange? We encounter strange events one after another in the real world. I don't know who is so brave. I am doing real tasks and dare to step in." He reached out and held up the mask. Subai in the mirror deliberately released some of his aura. Suddenly, a cold and chilling temperament was revealed, which fit perfectly with his current outfit. Subai was going to Chu Zhao's father's house to ask about something, and he probably had to use some force, so in order for the two brothers to continue to get along in the future, he could only hide his identity in front of Chu Zhao's father, but this disguise was just a whim. But it made Subai feel like he liked her from the bottom of his heart. It's a pity that both his black windbreaker and this mask are really just ordinary clothes and masks. There are actually clothes and masks with additional effects in the micro store, but now Subai is short of money and can't afford them, so he can only make do with them. It works. It seemed that Subai was a little too satisfied with his current look. Subai suddenly had an idea like a child. He took out two Hellfire shotguns, looked around with the muzzles raised, and muttered, "Die, die, die." Then, Subai stopped, holding one hand on the bathroom wall. He was a little bit dumbfounded by his second act just now. When the time was almost up, Subai took another can of beer in his hand and jumped out of the window of the room. It won't be too peaceful tonight. Terror Broadcast. Author, Chunji Dixiaolong. Chapter 153. It is a small two-bedroom apartment with a small layout and not very elegant decoration. However, the furnishings inside show a taste that is different from that of ordinary people. It cannot be said to be elegant, but it gives people a very clean and neat feeling. There are a lot of paintings and calligraphy at home, most of which are the works of the family members themselves. Some are from Chu Zhao's grandfather, some are from Chu Zhao's father, and some are from Chu Zhao. Chu Zhao's grandfather was originally a scout, and was later assigned to a local area to work as a criminal police officer. He was one of the first batch of real criminal police officers in China. Chu Zhao's father also became a soldier when he was young, and later joined the army. In the self-defense counterattack against Vietnam, he made great achievements in the war. With the help of the old man's connections, he started at a high level. Later, because he was really capable and good at being a good person, his official career really went smoothly. The Su family that Subai had little contact with and the Lu family behind Suner were both considered to be a group of meritorious families when the Republic was founded, and they still stood firm after several political turmoils, gradually forming what they are today. Climate: this kind of red family is fundamentally different from ordinary official families. They are similar to the royal relatives in ancient times. As long as they don't make stupid mistakes, don't make big mistakes, and don't stand in the wrong team, they will basically retire with the country. Therefore, when Chu Zhao was a child, he was able to play with Subai, Suner, and Gu Fan because of the foundation laid by his grandfather and father. After all, the word friend means two strings of money. This means that if the economic status of both parties is unequal, it will be difficult to become true friends. This is enough to show that it is not easy for Mr. Chu and Chu Zhao's father to fight from the grassroots. However, probably because both generations were born with mud-legged backgrounds, their expectations for the next generation were even greater. In fact, Chu Zhao did not look like the carefree person he really showed. Subai remembered that when he was in school. Son, Chu Zhaoy is also good at calligraphy on several musical instruments. He is simply from a more scholarly family than from a scholarly family. Perhaps, like Subai, he should have chosen his own path, going to college or traveling alone to become an artist. For this reason, when his family forced him to become a policeman, he showed a strong feeling of rejection. Subai still didn't go through the front door this time, probably because climbing up the wall and climbing the window became a habit. The window in Chu Zhao's bedroom was not locked because this was the 7th floor. It was really difficult to run up and climb up to become a thief. It's very difficult, but this kind of difficulty is indeed very difficult for ordinary thieves, but for Subai, it's not that difficult. Using both hands and feet, Subai climbed to the balcony of Chu Zhao's house in almost a few breaths. He stretched out his hand, patted the dusty windbreaker, straightened his collar, and pushed away the bedroom. The floor-to-ceiling windows and walked in. This should be the bedroom of Chu Zhao's parents. The bedroom is covered with red carpets, white sheets, and the quilt is folded into tofu blocks. There were voices coming from the living room, a man and a woman. It should be Chu Zhao's parents talking, and the two elders should be having dinner. Subai walked to the door, reached out and gently turned the door handle. The door was opened a crack. Then, Subai held a dagger in one hand and opened the door directly. Crack. The cold muzzle of the gun was directly pressed against Subai's chest. A man in his late 50s was holding a gun and pointing it at him. This should be Chu Zhao's father, Chu Jiangguo. Chu Jiangguo also held a pair of chopsticks in his other hand, with roasted eggplants on the chopsticks. It was obvious that he had just come over from the dinner table. He was very fast and his reactions were very sharp. He was worthy of being a veteran criminal detective who had experienced the baptism of war. Subai raised his hands above his head in a posture of surrender and relaxed his body. Chu Jiangguo glanced at the dagger in Subai's hand and said with a smile, "It doesn't look like a little thief. He looks like he wants to break into a house and kill someone." Chu Zhao's mother was sitting on a chair at this time, looking very nervous, but not too panicked. The last time Subai and Chu Jiangguo met was 7 or 8 years ago. In the past few years, the buddies would get together from time to time, but they rarely met their parents, especially after a few young people formed a murder club. And it is even more impossible for the other party's family to detect any clues. Therefore, Subai believed that Chu Jiangguo might still vaguely remember his appearance, but he would definitely not be able to distinguish his voice. "I'm coming here to ask something." "Oh, asking something," a playful smile appeared on Chu Jiangguo's face. "Other people always come to the door with wine and cigarettes and a smile when asking questions. How come you are here, climbing over the wall with a dagger and wearing a mask?" Subai pushed his body forward. Boom! The gun went off. However, because the muzzle of the gun was pressed against Subai's flesh, the gunshot had a dull feeling and was not very loud. Subai had deliberately lowered the muzzle of the gun on one side of his body, and the bullet was shot into himself. Lower abdomen, and penetrated through it. Chu Jiangguo only fired one shot. He fired very decisively, and he was sure that Subai would fall to the ground because of this shot. This was the experience of a veteran criminal investigator, but experience is effective for ordinary people. It does not apply to perverts like Subai who have long since separated from the level of ordinary people. Being shot did not make Subai lose his strength and fall down, but turned on the zombie state in an instant. Subai put his hand on Chu Jiangguo's neck, turned around, and lifted him to the wall, with his head on the ceiling. Subai's other hand held Bapi and placed it on Chu Jiangguo's neck. Chu Zhao's mother covered her mouth and did not scream. She was obviously afraid that if she screamed, she would force the assailant to kill her husband, and she was afraid of irritating Subai. "I came to ask about Wang Shui's case in 1994, not to kill anyone." Subai's cold eyes stared at Chu Jiangguo through the skull mask. Chu Jiangguo was not too nervous. Although his face became unsightly due to difficulty in breathing, Subai could feel that Father Chu Zhao was really calm. "Okay, I tell you." Subai let go of his hand. Chu Jiangguo sat on the ground, covering his neck and rubbing it. At the same time, he said unwillingly, "No matter how young you are, you can't beat me." "I didn't use all my strength," Subai replied. "Chu Jiangguo." Subai walked to the dining table and bowed to Chu Zhao's mother. "Auntie, pour some water, okay?" Chu Jiangguo also came over at this time, pulled out a chair, sat down, and motioned to his wife to pour some water. Subai also sat down, and Bapi was put away, but the mask continued to be worn on his face. He was not afraid of Chu Jiangguo's sudden violence, because he was confident that he could control the overall situation. In normal times, he would not be able to deal with Chu Jiangguo's level. The state cotters have too much causality, but now they are doing real tasks, so they can act relatively cheaply. As long as it is not too excessive and intentional, they can be forgiven by the terrorist broadcast. Of course, Subai had no intention of actually hurting Chu Zhao's father. It would be too unethical to kill Chu Zhao's entire family just to save or help Chu Zhao. "That case was indeed handled by me." "You can ask whatever you want," Chu Jiangguo said. "Just say what you want to say first." Subai reached out and took a glass of water from Chu Zhao's mother's hand and took a sip. He was not worried about what would fall into the water. Now that the situation had calmed down, Subai she didn't release that kind of murderous intention. From the fact that Chu Zhao's mother deliberately suppressed her scream before, it can be seen that she is not a stupid woman, and naturally she will not do stupid things. "Some information is in my study. We can go to the study to talk." Chu Jiangguo stood up and walked to his study. At the same time, he called his wife, "Don't call others to inform others. I will talk to him." Chu Zhao's mother nodded. Subai smiled. The family relationship in this family was quite harmonious. He followed Chu Jiangguo into the study. The study was not big, with a bookshelf and a desk. There was a computer on the desk. Chu Jiangguo turned on the computer. "I later organized that case and put it in the computer." Subai was not surprised that Chu Jiangguo used a computer. These days, if you want to continue to climb up, you must not fall behind. Chu Jiangguo turned the screen in front of Subai, which was a photo of Wang Shui. "It's her," Subai said. "This girl died miserably. I still remember clearly that she was tortured to death." Chu Jiangguo's words contained a kind of reminiscence and sigh. This case happened more than 20 years ago. At that time, not long after he transferred from the army to the local area, his son was just born at that time. "I want to know who the murderer is. There have been rumors since then that it was your police who protected the murderer because the murderer's family background is not simple." Subai put his feet up on the desk and looked at Chu Jiangguo. "It's just what others say. At that time, I had almost found out the matter, and informed the victim's family that the case was about to get to the bottom of the case. But later, the superiors stopped it, and in the end, the case was suppressed forever. Go down and press it for more than 20 years. I don't quite understand what you said." Subai looked at Chu Jiangguo playfully. "It's a bit inconsistent." Haha. Chu Jiangguo smiled. "Even if the murderer has a background, it will not be of much use in this case, because the case has been publicized at that time. If it is to protect a person with knowledge, the murderer in the background is really a loss that is not worth the gain." "But you still said that above." Chu Jiangguo interrupted Subai and crossed his hands together. "If the murderer is not one person, but dozens, or even hundreds of people, do you think they can still be arrested and announced?"